When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. Home delivery available in Regina at sassbeerdelivery.ca. Welcome to the 3 Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only free Gavin Adcock podcast. I am Joel Gasson with John Fraser as usual, and I don't blame you if you don't quite understand the reference I made off the top there. You may have missed the news, and then because it involves sort of a smaller United States university college football team. That is, of course, Georgia Southern. One of their players, Gavin Adcock, has been suspended indefinitely, and he apologized to Georgia Southern fans. Side note, Georgia Southern is incredible. Just because their slogan is GATA, GATA, which stands for Get After That Ass.
And they've got a guy named Gavin. Like, okay, you can't have a slogan that says Get After That Ass, have a guy with the name Adcock, and then shit on him for what he did.
Yes. So he put out this big apology on social media for what he did. And I'm going to open this by saying I do not condone what he did. But Georgia Southern overreached in terms of their punishment because he apologized for standing on top of a moving team bus and chugging a beer on Saturday after they almost beat Louisiana Lafayette, which would have been a relatively big upset for that team.
Well, and like you look at the fact that, you know, until now we hadn't heard of Georgia Southern football. And we're talking about them to pull off a near upset. And again, I'm not one that knows a ton about college football, but like, for the guy to get on top of the bus with the name Adcock and chug a beer, like, to me, I did so much stupider shit in college. I once fell off the back of my own pickup truck once in high school, never mind college. Some of the shit I did in college I don't think I can repeat for, I don't know if the statute of limitations has passed for crimes committed in Thunder Bay, Ontario, but I feel like that's just college kids giving off college energy. And I feel like if you were thinking about going to Georgia Southern, this is like big Mormon school energy. This is like honor code, TCU, not the place you go to have fun. They should have rode with this. They should have made sure this kid was starting. I can't believe they suspended him. Again, it's not safe. And as a parent, I should be saying that. But come on. You almost pull up an upset and you're a shitty football team. You get on top of the bus and chug a beer in front of some students. Like, the hell's wrong with that?
Yeah, like, I mean, he probably shouldn't have done it. And yeah, you probably shouldn't be on top of a moving bus.
Oh, but, I see the issue. Okay? Yeah. I'm just Googling it now. Apparently it was before the game.
Yeah, even then, who cares?
Right. I mean, who has...
like, he shouldn't have done it, blah, 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 blah. But to suspend him indefinitely seems like... It seems like a bit much. I could see him having to apologize and then...
Give him a game or one of those token, like
3 hours of community service or something. But like, to suspend a guy indefinitely for being dumb, I mean, if you're going to do that, there would be a lot of guys who would be playing football.
The thing I think that bothers me about this, and I'm going to get serious for a second, which we never do off the top, is there have been some egregious crimes committed by far worse people that have been buried and ignored and things like that. And this kid gets on top of the bus, chugs a beer as the fans are driving by, and he's suspended indefinitely. I hope it's just I hope it's no more than a game or two for this kid. Because that's just fun, man. Sports are supposed to be fun. Football's supposed to be fun. And yeah, I'm all aboard on free Gavin Adcock, and it's not just because I get to say the word Adcock and make it feel like this podcast has big dick energy now.
No, it is not just because of that. But, of course, yes, sports are supposed to be fun, and we did the thing where we talk about a thing, and then sort of the opposite happened, as we had actually a bit of a fun game between the Riders and the Lions, or at least a fun finish between the Riders and the Lions last week. We're going to get into that in a little bit. And we also have to talk, of course, about the Riders' upcoming schedule, which could also be fun, which is the fact that they get to play the Calgary Stampeders 3 times in a row.
Yes.
Which is a fun little quirk that can only happen in the CFL.
Speaking of fun, too, I'm going to need you. Your text messages are going to ding. I try not to text you during.
My phone's always on silent anyway, so it's okay.
That's fair. Okay, so I need you to pick up your phone and look at the text I just sent you, because this is another fun thing that is relevant to this podcast.
Okay.
Okay. Do you like it or what?
Absolutely.
Yours is in the mail. So to describe it, and actually for our podcast listeners, this is now
podcasting is a visual medium after all. So
that's right. For our podcast listeners, and I'll be tweeting this after the show and a bunch of stuff. I've showed it to some guys. We already have one pre-order. We have made Sergio shirts. It's got a football going through some goalposts on a blue t-shirt that says Sergio. So I knew I wanted you to see yours. Yours is in the mail. I put it in the mail today. But I already have one, if not 2 people that want them. And I'm like, they might show up before yours gets there. So I had to text you the picture of the Sergio shirt. So if you want a Sergio shirt, just hit up Joel or I on Twitter. They're $35. I can probably get them delivered to here in Saskatoon. If not, you might have to pay some extra for shipping out of Lloydminster. It's my sister-in-law's company that's making them for us. And proceeds go to paying the football fees of my nephew, who's a pretty kick-ass offensive lineman.
Yeah. And you know who pays the bills around here?
I do. It's the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, right?
Them. And there's an ad read you're supposed to make up today because you deleted the email.
Okay, you weren't supposed to get into that. Yeah, so did an inbox purge. I went through, I unsubscribed to a bunch of stuff, and the ad copy for our Manscaped ads has been sitting in my starred folder, and I hate with Gmail, you delete everything, including your start email. It does give you like a warning, like, hey, idiot, you start this, it's important, sure you want to delete this. So all I remember was it talked about your balls being shiny and space, and I usually ask Joel to play some space music, which then he refuses. But the most important part is if you like keeping your equipment clean, I did that today, or you like keeping your nose hairs clean, I need to also do that today. That's our friends at Manscaped. So if you're into self-grooming, go to Manscaped and use our promo code FANSIDED20 to get 20% off and free shipping. That is the promo code FANSIDED20, 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. And I feel like part of this is like my silent protest that like there's no new ad copy, and I deleted it, and I'm not going to lie, I screwed up as the guy that does the ad read that pays the bills, so if they pull their sponsorship, you can put this one on me there, Joel.
You blew it.
I totally blew it. That is a 100% you blew it moment. Good thing we have those Sergio shirts to sell now.
Yeah, we can do that, and the contract is almost up too, so I don't really know what's going on with our friends over at Manscaped, but hey, we talked about them. That should count, I think.
We gave out the promo code. We gave
Absolutely.
it out twice. That's the thing. FANSIDED20, manscaped.com. Use the Performance Package 4.0. I used mine today. I'm sorry, Fonzie and Jacques. I just, I know you don't want too many details. I won't get into the details of my routine, but I definitely did use it today.
You could say this is a real Adcock.
The best thing is when you trim properly, it looks like you're a bit of a Levi Adcock.
That was former rider. This was that was That's former rider Levi Adcock. This is Gavin Adcock we were talking about. But that's my fault. That's my fault for putting his name in your brain before we started recording.
That's fair. And it's also, I know a lot of other self-respecting podcasts would delete that, but we're just going to keep on rolling and go with the Adcock joke from trimming your Equipmunk. Makes it looks like you've gone a Levi or Gavin Adcock after you're all trimmed up and looking spiffy.
Yeah, I mean, we can't nail every transition around here.
That one was pretty good. I will give you credit for that. It's not quite like my recent streak of coming up with songs on the spot, but the Adcock joke. I got Jacques Cartier in my brain now.
That's
the
unfortunate.
Adcock joke was pretty good.
Because what we really need right now is a beer to add to this. For the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, John, what's in the glass this week?
Well, it is the official, unofficial beer of the podcast, as thanks to climate change, summer is now apparently never ending in Saskatchewan, which I'm kind of okay with in a small way. It is the Pile of Bones White IPA. You tipped me off that the 8 packs of Pile of Bones would be on sale as part of Sobeys case lot sale, so I went down, picked myself 2 mixed packs up for $55, and it was a good weekend when somehow these survived from, when did I text you? Thursday that I bought these?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they're still mostly in my fridge. In fact, I have more to put in my fridge eventually. So,
wow. That's rare for you. Very rare.
Yeah, staff golf tournament on Sunday that ended up with me being zesty. Have we ever discussed my levels of drunk here on the podcast?
I don't know if we have.
Okay. So, in John's world, we have sober, then you have warm, right? That's when you have like 1 or 2, usually deciding how the night's going to go. You feel a little flush, a little warmer than you would. Then you have buzzed. Buzzed is when you definitely know, I'm not going to be driving anymore. Starting to feel a little loosey-goosey and good. Drunk, well, that's self-explanatory. But past drunk, there is this band known as Zesty. Zesty is like when you're like maximum fun, usually maximum loud. This is the part of the night where like you kind of make an ass of yourself, but not that bad. Like you'll do something like sing karaoke or like hit a golf shot with your pants down, but not your underwear, or maybe like do a shitty dance or hit the dance floor at a wedding. That is Zesty. When you're at Zesty, you're only about 2 drinks away from blackout. It's like, it's that close. So I was definitely Zesty on Sunday, while Friday, I would say I was simply drunk. But I spent a lot of time on the golf course this weekend. And so there's the levels of drunk, which is also funny because watching some afternoon television today, there's an insurance company from the States called Zesty Insurance.
Sounds like something you could use.
Yeah, I have broken shit, including my own pinky while being zesty a couple of times. So I feel like, a good example of zesty is the first night of the Saskatoon men's Bonspiel.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, that was zesty. But see, you're still smart enough when you're zesty to do things like order your Cuckoo's Pizza to arrive 10 minutes after your Uber arrives. So it's just boom, boom.
Is zesty a requirement for broom losing speed, though?
I think of that Bonspiel it was. Yes, it usually is. I can hold on to my broom until I am zesty.
Fair enough. For me,
what's in your glass after that long Fraser tangent?
For me, it won't be nearly as long. Also available in said mixer pack. We both gone with sponsored beers this evening. That is, of course, the Pile of Bones Space Cadet IPA. Just a little maltier, a little caramelier than some of the other IPAs on the market. So sometimes you just want something a little more bitter, a little more dank. That's something like that, and that's the beer that hits the spot in that regard.
It really is. It's one of the. I deemed it. I gave my brother-in-law from Calgary the essential IPA pack from Saskatchewan for his birthday, and the Space Cadet and the White IPA were both in that I gave him. So I would deem it an essential IPA, along with Zilla, the Blackbridge Uno. I forget I got him something from High Key and something else, but either way. I would consider Space Cadet an essential Saskatchewan IPA.
Absolutely. The Riders, they are 5-2 on the season. could easily be 4-3, or it could probably be even worse, depending on how you want to look at the way some of the games went. But here they are, 5-2, and that's basically all you can say. And that's really all that matters at the end of the day, because, as I said in my post-game column following the Riders' defeat of the BC Lions, they've found a lot of ways to win games over the years, especially since the start of the Chris Jones into the Craig Dickinson era. Mm-hmm. What we saw on Friday night might take the cake. And before we go into all this, yes, it was an entertaining, exciting finish. I'm not going to proclaim the entire game was amazing. It was a decently played game for the most part. Like, I wasn't bored by any stretch of the imagination. I was just fighting to stay awake because I'd been up since 10 to 6 that morning for work. So,
and again, you work a real job with physical labor, not me that sits in an office and talks to people.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just tired from that, not necessarily because the game I thought was boring. It was fine. It wasn't a classic by any stretch of the imagination until we got to the end, where things just went bananas. And yeah, that is one thing that has kind of been lacking from CFL games, and happens from time to time, where you have sort of average to below average games for 57 minutes, and then they just tend to go off the rails. And that's pretty much what we saw against the Lions. If you don't remember because you missed it because you fell asleep, or you just want to hear it again because you enjoyed what happened,
or you were day drinking with two buddies from your fantasy football league, and your buddy swid and fell asleep putting your kids to bed at 9:00 and woke up to about 18 text messages. Yeah. Please do recount it for us, Joel.
So basically, yeah, late in the game, Cody Fajardo throws a pick on a ill-advised pass, so I believe it was about 2nd and 6, when a first down would have sufficed. He goes deep, which has not really worked well for this team, and you get intercepted. At that point, you would kind of think, okay, here we go. The way this year has gone, it sort of felt like it was going to be over. Mm-hmm. Except it wasn't. Yeah, so before that, the Lions also missed a field goal in the game. That was important. The Lions went up a touchdown scored a touchdown. They ended up going up 5 from that touchdown, or up 5. And for some reason didn't go for 2.
Which I will never get. That is like, I think that's when I opened up my Twitter feed. The number of people questioning not going for 2 there was at an all-time high, which makes me feel good about my own echo chamber. Yeah,
so I was like, okay, you're going to go up 5 and not go for 2. This is probably going to come back to haunt you, and it did. But nonetheless, the BC Lions still had the lead late. Even they got the interception, they got the ball back. And then one of the best punters in the league decided to shank one a little bit. Not the worst shank we ever saw. There was a shank in college on the weekend for a 7-yard punt, which was incredible. This turned out to be a 26-yard net, so maybe like 10, 20 yards most that they missed out on. So not great, but it could have been a whole lot worse. And yeah, then the Riders came all the way back down, scored touchdown, tie game. Then point after, take the lead. And the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, then the ensuing kickoff. The ball goes up in the air. They do a really high kick to force the play. And Lucky Whitehead, who had scored 2 touchdowns in the game, fumbles it. The Riders recover. Don Webb scores touchdown. And all of a sudden, it looks like the Riders blew them out.
And anybody that had the BC Lions covering the spread was also very upset with that totally meaningless touchdown. But you know who had a 43-yard punting average during his CFL career, Joel?
Sergio Castillo?
That's right! And you know Sergio would have come up clutch, which is why the man has a T-shirt now.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, I was almost at a loss for words after the game, and I was still quite tired. I got a bit of a second wind partway through the game, so that kind of helped me through it all. And I remember when I finished my column, I said to Dunk, I'm like, sorry if this doesn't make any sense. But he said it was on point. I'm like, okay, because I wasn't really entirely sure what I was writing, to be frank. And it was.
I love that you led with the dumb too, for the record.
You had to. Like the ending of that game was so dumb. It was so chaotic. And it was just everything we had been waiting for and begging for in the CFL. And we finally got it.
You're right. I remember I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I saw your article. And before I went back to my very drunken sleep, I read it again. I'm like, so that's what happened. That was super crazy. I wish I didn't miss that. I'm going back to sleep now. So, but I did want to commend you on leading with the dumb, because that is the only way we can describe the ending of that game. It was dumb and we love it. Now, I wonder if the Lions go up 7 and the Riders tie the game, does the last minute kickoff return still happen? Like, I feel like there's a bizarre alternate universe where that game goes to overtime. Like you know me, and we've talked about my love of science and multiple universes and things like that. I feel like there's a universe where they go for 2 and end up winning the game in overtime.
It's possible. I mean, there's a couple different routes I could have done. I think, if they go for 2, they're up 7. The Riders could opt to tie the game, and then I assume they would just go sort of with a more traditional kickoff rather than like a lazy fly ball to center field kind of kickoff. Quite frankly,
but it worked.
It worked. It totally worked. What they did worked, and it was phenomenal. And I just kind of laughed at it, quite frankly, when it happened. But there's also the other alternate universe to that where I don't think Craig Dickinson actually would have done this, but he could have gone for 2 in the win right at the end of the game still.
That seems like a Craig Dickinson move.
I mean, it would have been... It's a move I probably would have done, because I think... your odds of winning in that moment are still better than in overtime. You got like a 50-50 chance. You got like a 70% chance-ish of scoring that point in that moment.
Right.
So the odds would say go for 2. And I remember watching college on Saturday, and it was the game between Clemson. Clemson was facing NC State. That game went to overtime, and NC State had the ball last in the first overtime because they kind of do the CFL shootout thing.
They do, yep.
Yeah, and they got down, and NC State scored after Clemson had scored, and I was like, go for 2, go for 2, go for 2. They went for 1 and forced double overtime. They still ended up winning, but regardless, those are just those moments, because I remember Indiana did that last year against Penn State, and they won by going for 2 by having the ball second. So I think there is advantages to doing that, and I mean, in professional sports, in a game like that, I don't know if Craig Dickinson would have done it. He probably should have, and he probably could have done it and really gotten away with it, because they still would have won the season series, because they would have lost by fewer than 4.
Which full kudos to Craig Dickinson, because you've seen a lot of dumb things said by coaches over the years.
Yeah.
Craig Dickinson was aware that he's like, if I need to lose by less than 4, I will do everything in my power to make that happen.
Yeah.
He knew how important it was to win against BC.
Yeah, I mean, but it was. He credit him for saying that and thinking that way, but 4 is sort of that awkward number, because even the scenario where the Riders were in, technically, when they were at the goal line, they could have kicked a field goal there, lost the game, but still won the season series.
Right.
So there isn't really a scenario where you're probably going to be in a spot where you kick a field goal to lose by less than 4, but weren't in a spot to previously win the game on like the play before that.
Right. And you know what? I'll give Moss, and I know actually met one of our listeners dropping Max off at a birthday party on Saturday, Ted. I'm terrible with names. I told him I'd probably get his name wrong, but I went back in the text between you and I to said his name right. Ted had some fair criticism of the Jason Moss offense, but I liked the cojones to just keep it simple with 2 seconds left. Like, I think a lot of OCs in that moment, 2 seconds left, they think about a pass play, maybe you can get a quick one off, maybe you got 1 play left, but like to just say, all right, we're going to send our big boys in, we're going to send Cody over, and we're going to see what happens. Like, that takes some stones with no time left on the clock to call a relatively simple play of Cody just going over the top. So kudos to that, again, to lead to that crazy ending.
Yeah, and this is now 2 games in a row where they've shown they've kind of got over that sort of goal line offense that basically cost them the West Final.
Yes.
So that is a very important thing that this team has gotten over. We can talk a lot about the Jason Ma's offense. Like the start of that game, the first half especially, was just horrendous with the hitch screens and the out routes.
Oh God!
Both teams were extremely guilty of it. I made the joke on Twitter to I believe Eric Emmons' name. I was like, was like the forward pass banned before the start of this game? Like both teams were just throwing it right along the line of scrimmage all game. I'm like, okay, boys, let's go. Throw it downfield already. Throw it at least 3 yards downfield. Like, come on.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you could, like, the hitch screen at times when you go to it too many times is so predictable. And
I'm a Steelers fan. I know exactly how that turns out.
Oh God, of course you do. But the thing is, like, that just leads to the narrative that, like, it's games in BC in the regular season are just weird. Like, I find them, and maybe it's because I'm either half in the bag or half in the bed. I just find watching those late night games in BC, no matter who's playing, they're just weird, and everybody goes ultra conservative. And
because there was that game a few years ago when June Jones was the coach in Hamilton, and there was a lot of questionable decisions. Well, I actually kind of liked the decisions he made. Like he punted for the Rouge to go up 8 late, and then BC came back and scored and still got the 2-point convert to tie it to force overtime, and then won in overtime. And I was like, I mean, like, come on, like we can get into whether, we don't need to get into whether those were right decisions or not. There's a lot of weird, goofy things that had to happen for it to backfire on them, and they did. So yeah, but that's the kind of stuff that
happen in BC.
It does, and it's a bit of the sort of Pac-12 after dark mentality. I don't know. Like I think there's a little bit of, especially Eastern teams are going in, even Saskatchewan at times, depending on the time of the year and the time change. It's a pretty big clock adjustment when, especially if you're an Eastern team going into BC, starting your game essentially at 10:30 at night back home. That's tough. And now imagine if there's ever a team in Atlantic Canada and they're playing the game at like midnight their time.
God. As a lover of chaos, I want to see it, but and it's almost like that mentality leads to that weirdly conservative things that OCs do when they're in BC. It's just like they get to BC and they're like, all right, hitch screens, runs up the middle. We're going to keep this entertaining but boring at the same time. And yeah, it's games in BC are weird. And I was reminded, not in a good way, of the Cody Fajardo, or not the Cody Fajardo, the Tino Sinceri era. Do you remember? I remember Tino played one game in Montreal where he attempted like 2 passes ahead of the line of scrimmage in one half, and it was just
I was probably at that game because I had to cover that era. Like that was the year; those were the years I actually went on the road covering that team.
Right? Yes.
So I probably blacked a lot of that out on purpose at this point.
Oh, I can't blame you, but I remember it because I was at my mother and father-in-law's when they still lived in Anglefeld, sitting on the couch. And, they're born and bred in Saskatchewan, essentially. They've spent most of their adult lives here. So Rider games are an event that the family gets together for, and the TVs in the house are all on the Rider game when it's game day. And I'll never forget watching my father-in-law turn that game off. And I had flashbacks to that, watching the weird start to the offense in that game. Now, it did end up being an entertaining game, but the start of it, at least, didn't capture my attention, which is probably why I was in bed at 10 o'clock. It wasn't all the golfing. It was the game. So
had to have been, definitely, yes.
Had nothing to do with the golf and the drinking I'd been doing with the boys.
No chance of that at all. So, yeah, the Riders, they've beaten the BC Lions twice, securing in the easy way the season series, and I would say probably in the driver's seat to finish second in the West now.
Right.
With that, depending though, because stranger things have happened in the CFL. Their next 3 games, because now for 3 straight games, the Saskatchewan Roughriders will play the Calgary Stampeders. The Stamps will get a break in the middle there when the Riders are on a bye week and they'll play someone else. But the Riders get to play the Stamps 3 games in a row.
That's so weird.
And only in the CFL could this happen because, in most other sport, in every other, sort of level of football, you don't play a team 3 times, at least professional football / American college football. You don't play a team 3 times, so if you do, it's in the 3rd times in a playoff game, and the other 2 they're going to not make them back to back in the NFL.
Which we've seen before. I remember the Riders have done that a couple times against actually Calgary at Edmonton, where like the second game doesn't mean shit, and the 3rd game's the playoff game. But 3 times of the regular season, you're right, is bizarre and weird, and I feel like all sorts of like I have a bad feeling about these 3 games, Joel, and it's not.
It's because, and I will give credit to Rob Ansone of the Leader Post and Murray McCormick, who were talking about it on the Rider Rumblings podcast through the Leader Post, as I was listening to it walking the dog this evening.
Right.
Under Craig Dickinson and Jeremy O'Day, which is so far only one season, and Cody Fajardo, the Riders have not beat the Calgary Stampeders.
Interesting.
And the Calgary Stampeders finished third in the West in 2019, if you'd remember. So the Riders finished first in the West despite not beating the Calgary Stampeders once. So your right for concern about these games is not entirely wrong.
Right, and I'm going just off of a gut feeling, because you look at like everything objectively, and one of my favorite things to say is that numbers never lie.
Yeah.
And all the numbers would indicate that Saskatchewan is a better football team than Calgary this year. Everything that both teams have been through, you know, Calgary doesn't look like the same Calgary, but holy shit, if I still don't have this just like bad feeling in my gut that this team could be 5-5 after all of this. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm not.
You would think they'd win at least one. Not that that's any better, really, but.
Right, but I as long as I've lived in Saskatchewan, the Calgary Stampeders have just been like the doom factory for the Riders.
There's been some key wins. Like obviously the 2013 West Final in Calgary was a big win, and then there was the Duron Carter pick 6 game that they won.
Right, but I mean we're talking big win. But it just seems like Calgary is a hill to climb and get over, and it is different this year. Like none of the numbers I look at, nothing I look at says to me, yes, Calgary's going to beat Saskatchewan 3 straight. I have that gut feeling that something bad is going to happen to the Riders in these next 3 games because, again, football is it might be the toughest sport to beat somebody 2 in a row in, but you're playing somebody 3 in a row, which is even more weird. I don't know. I see games 2 and 3 being very weird, and I don't know. I got a bad feeling. And if they go 3-0, you are welcome to mark and play back this clip as like a dream sequence like Tim and Sid used to do. And I hope my fears are alleviated. I hope Saskatchewan has essentially locked up second place in the West with 3 straight wins over the hated Stampeders. But I got a feeling, and it's nothing more than a feeling that things could go bad.
Not that tonight's going to be a good night. Yeah, I mean, I would say the odds of them winning all 3 games are pretty low. I would definitely agree with that. They should probably win 2 of them, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Regardless, this is their opportunity to essentially close out their spot in the West. I think BC can still get in there, especially if the Riders do lose 3 to the Stampeders, and all of a sudden BC is definitely back in play for second in the West, and Calgary's back in there as well, and then we got a whole other mess on our hands if we're back to who the hell is what again. But if the Riders have an opportunity now, this is what's in front of them to say, okay, we can put our foot down and essentially close the door to everyone behind us if we, I would say, win 2 out of 3 of these games.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 basically locks it up for you.
Because Edmonton ain't catching them. No one's worried about Edmonton.
Oh, God, especially after watching them tonight?
Yeah. So,
like of all the takes we have on this program, the fact that there's something weird in Edmonton that keeps them from being good recently, that one is holding up well because, congrats on losing to the Red Blacks for the second time.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit in a second.
Right.
But, so yeah, like this is a really big opportunity for this team to sort of put their stamp on this season and make the most of it and make sure that, say, they can go, okay, this is who we are. We are now maybe 1B standard of the West. Winnipeg is standard 1. Saskatchewan is standard 2. The rest of you, fight amongst yourselves.
Right, but even okay, let's say I would say 2-1 is realistic. I don't think in football you can beat a team 3 times in a row when you give a shit about all 3 games. So 2-1's realistic. Let's say Winnipeg stumbles over the next 4 weeks. All of a sudden, maybe first place is back. I don't see that happening, but
Winnipeg would have to take a pretty big step back. But I mean, it's It's not impossible. We've seen
as a Bomber fan, I can tell you it is certainly not impossible.
We've seen stranger things happen in this league. I mean, BC Lions started 1-6 to go on to win the Grey Cup one year. I mean, so it is possible that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers could, in theory, rattle off a 3-game losing streak, and all of a sudden things are interesting again. Especially because Winnipeg doesn't get the advantage of playing Ottawa this year, so they don't get unless you're Edmonton, they don't get the free space on the bingo card. So, I mean, I wouldn't hold my breath on that happening, but what is clearly happening right now, and this is a discussion we've kind of had for a while in this league about this whole season, and from the very start, was we didn't know kind of who fit where.
Right.
And now that Edmonton lost to Ottawa again, and it feels very weird in general to be recording a podcast on a Tuesday evening like we haven't been for the last little while, and there was a game on this evening.
Yeah,
and it wasn't like a rescheduled game.
Yeah, or like how next week technically nobody has a bye week because Ottawa plays twice in the same week of the CFL season.
Yeah. I mean, they used to do that like all the time back with like the Renegades in the 9-team league. They would make one team basically do a double and then get a week off, pretty much, I think.
Right. It's still strange to be talking about Tuesday night football. However, as a lover of football, I'm glad that there was football.
I mean, Tuesday night football that isn't Maction, of course.
Of course, right? Of course. But I mean, for those that are watching the Pro Bowl and not the Maction, it's a weird thing to just go through Twitter and be like, oh yeah, there's a football game on tonight. So as you said though, Joel, I think you can throw Edmonton, although their record is the same as Ottawa right now.
Yeah.
And actually their points for and against isn't that much different. I think Edmonton and Ottawa right now are looking like the bottom tier. Calgary, I would put above them, and Montreal as well. Then you've got this Toronto, BC. We're still unsure. Then I think, to me, you've got Hamilton, Saskatchewan, and then Winnipeg. That's kind of how things are shaking out right now. So as the degenerate gambler, I'm about to curse all of your teams because I finally feel confident that teams are lining up in some sort of tier or positioning.
Yeah, and I'm honestly just a little surprised that we've actually gotten this sort of clarity and sort of where we are in the league based on, the year off, and we didn't really know, and it seemed really tight for a while. But yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with kind of what we're looking at. Winnipeg remains the clear class of the league. Then I would say Saskatchewan falls behind them, and I would agree that Hamilton is up there as well. They've not surprisingly turned it around. The record hasn't quite gotten over the top yet because they still have the odd speed bump here or there. There might still be questions about whether they are the Grey Cup contenders we thought they were, but they're still a pretty good football team at this point. Toronto, BC, again, they're very up and down. We don't know precisely what they are. We know that they can be pretty good, and there's a shot that maybe they put it together, but there's still weird ups and downs with them. Toronto seems to have a weird road thing. BC, reading JC Abbott's post-game thoughts on the Rider game, they're very boom and bust. They either score a touchdown or go 2 and out. There's pretty much no in between, and you're going to have difficulty winning multiple playoff games doing that. So that's kind of the spot they're in, which is going to make it difficult for them. I still believe in Montreal. I still believe that they are better than they're showing. I don't know what it's going to take to get over the top outside of the obvious, which is Vernon Adams Jr. has to play better. Right. But I still believe in Montreal, partially out of bias because I picked them to win in preseason just to be a little different. But yeah, and then from there on, you got Calgary, who I believe is worse than Montreal. Edmonton, I still believe, despite losing to them twice, is marginally better than Ottawa, especially when Trevor Harris is in the game. And then Ottawa's at the bottom.
To give you hope on your Montreal prediction, they play Hamilton on Saturday, and then they go back-to-back against the Red Blacks. So they
did score like 50 last time they played Ottawa. So
right, so they've got a chance to kind of get that shot in the arm. So they sandwich the two teams ahead of them with Hamilton and Toronto with 2 back-to-back wins against the Ottawa Red Blacks. And Ottawa with, again, a tremendously weird schedule. I cannot get over how weird Ottawa's schedule continues to be. Tuesday night football, Wednesday night football, Monday night football, Saturday night football, or Saturday afternoon football, which is finally kind of normal for them for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
just the strangest. It always seems to be Ottawa or Montreal that has that weird schedule, and I'm here for it. But I'm glad we're finally starting to figure out what the hell is going on. So now I will go bet on all those teams that we think we know are winning, and completely Fraser curse them all.
Hey, Jacques Cartier, show's over.
Brace yourself for something fuel nominal. Unleaded 88 is the clear fuel choice. It's cheaper, cleaner, and greener. And it's grown by Iowa corn farmers. Now that's totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.